When Kevin remained calm despite their best efforts to provoke him, Sherwin and Mike eventually called for security to kick him out of the auction venue. Given this, the head security guard had no choice but to politely ask Kevin for his invitation letter. However, he'd come in using Nadia's invitation letter, so he couldn't provide it at the moment. Since no one knew that Zane had personally invited him earlier, Kevin used this misunderstanding to feign embarrassment, only vaguely mentioning that he knew people from the Pearl family. "Can you believe the nerve of this guy? He can't even tell a decent lie. We saw him here alone. He clearly doesn't have any friends here, so you should hurry up and kick him out." Sherwin Blair smiled proudly, thinking that he'd finally gotten even with Kevin. "I'm sorry, sir. If you don't have an invitation letter with you right now, I'll have to escort you out." The head security guard made a gesture towards the exit. Nobody in the crowd took Kevin's comment seriously. Even if he claimed to know people from the Pearl family, it was too vague of a statement to carry any weight. After all, practically everyone there could say the same thing. "Are you sure? You might regret this later." Kevin sighed as he patted the lead security guard's arm. This shocked him and everyone who was watching. Could it be that Kevin had really been invited by the Pearl family? After all, he just won first place at the martial arts competition. Perhaps the Healing Arts School had been invited, and he was their representative. For a moment, the surrounding people's facial expressions changed when they thought about the situation, and no one was willing to speak ill of him anymore. The security guard regained his composure. "Sir, please just kindly follow us to the exit. We don't want to use any unnecessary force on you, nor do we want to disturb the peace in this venue." "I've already given you a chance. What will happen next is entirely up to you." Kevin showed a mocking smile because he just saw Zane Pearl coming towards him. "Sir, I'm asking you one last time to please leave the auction house. Otherwise, don't blame us if we have to sort this out through forceful measures." The head security guard's face had already turned completely cold. He was now sure that Kevin had really come in to cause trouble. "Why are you still talking to this person? Hurry up and kick him out." Mike really wanted to see Kevin being thrown out like trash. "I'm sorry, sir." The head security guard waved at the other guards behind him. Suddenly, a loud shout could be heard from across the other side of the large room. "Enough of this nonsense! What the hell is going on here?" Before anyone could turn around and take a look behind them, Zane Pearl and Nadia Alexander had already walked over and made their way through the surrounding crowd. "And who the hell are you?" Mike smiled coldly as he sneered at the two of them. "Why are you protecting this piece of trash? Could it be that you're his accomplices? How dare you come to my family's auction and say that to my face?" Zane fumed as he slapped Mike's cheek. Mr. Zane Pearl?" Sherwin Blair and the Steele sisters gasped. In Chicago, Zane Pearl's reputation could be compared with someone as ruthless as Dalton Steele and Dominic Archer, so everyone in the room began to get nervous as soon as they recognized him. "Mr. Pearl!" All of the security guards greeted Zane respectfully. "How dare you guys treat this guest with such disrespect? Don't you know that I personally invited him?" Zane, with his violent temper, fiercely punched the head security guard right in the stomach. Mike, who was still recovering from Zane's slap, was holding his cheek as he turned to Kevin. "Why didn't you just say that you knew Zane Pearl? If you'd explained things clearly, we could have avoided this troublesome situation." "You guys are pretty bold, aren't you?" Kevin smiled at Sherwin and the Steele sisters as he shook his head. He knew that nobody would believe him even if he had told them the truth. Cold sweat broke out on Sherwin's forehead. "Mr. Pearl, we were just joking around." "Joking around?" Zane glanced at him coldly. "I think it's best to let my brother be the judge of that." His words suddenly caused an uproar amongst the crowd. Did Mr. Pearl just call that useless son-in-law his brother? What the hell is going on? I can't keep up with what's happening anymore. Everyone was confused. Sherwin and the Steele sisters were so shocked that they were standing there with their mouths hanging open. They never expected Kevin and Zane to be such close friends. Could they be taken out by them all at once? This was too much for them to handle. Kevin, what do you think we should do about this? Zane handed over to him the right to handle the matter. To be honest, Zane really wanted to beat these people up. It hadn't been easy for him to convince Kevin to participate in the Pearl family auction, but Sherwin and the others had already found a way to offend him before it could even start. As everyone watched, Kevin just smiled faintly and walked into the auction room with Zane. He didn't even bother to look back at the four of them. Without saying anything, this kind of silent neglect somehow felt worse than public humiliation. How did he get so close to Zane Pearl? What's so special about that useless son-in-law? Sherwin cursed with fear lingering in his heart. Kevin's indifference towards them made him feel even more embarrassed. When I find a chance, I'll definitely get my revenge on that piece of trash. Mike clenched his fist tightly as he stared at Kevin's back. However, while the two of them were talking, they didn't notice that Nadia had yet to go inside the auction room. You're from the Blair and Tripp families, aren't you? Nadia gave them a deep look. From now on, your two families will no longer be able to buy medicinal pills from any branch of the Herbalist Society. How dare you threaten us like that? Who the hell do you think you are? Mike had fully lost his composure at that point. He then tried to size her up without knowing who he was dealing with. Could this person be any more of a fool? How dare he speak to Nadia Alexander like that? Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to say for a moment. Sherwin fearfully looked at Nadia. You must be mistaken. This is all just one big misunderstanding, right? Misunderstanding? Mr. Williams is a guest of mine, and in case you didn't know it, the person you just insulted is the president of the Herbalist Society's Southern Branch. After Nadia said this, she asked her members to deal accordingly with Mike and the others. Then she turned around and slowly walked into the auction. Upon hearing this, both Blanca and Rain were completely dumbfounded. They finally understood why their cousin Dalton was so close to Kevin. With connections to the Herbalist Society, that useless son-in-law had become a person that the entire Steele family couldn't afford to be enemies with. This left the Steele sisters feeling instant regret. Damn it! What's so great about that piece of trash? Mike still couldn't understand what was happening. Before he could utter another word, several members of the Herbalist Society had already surrounded him. Without saying another word, they knocked him out with a punch to the face and threw him out of the auction house like trash. Then they turned their attention toward Sherwin Blair. There's no need for any of that. I'll see myself out. Sherwin smiled apologetically as he quickly ran for the exit. Meanwhile, the Steele sisters had gotten away with just a stern warning. Still, this was enough to frighten them to their core. As for the Pearl family auction, Kevin had just won the first bid. From there, almost no one dared to outbid him on anything he liked, including the renewal grass and heavenly flower. Everyone there understood that after that evening, the once useless son-in-law of the Jones family would take a huge leap in status and subsequently become a part of Chicago's upper class. Moreover, offending him was indirectly making enemies with the Herbalist Society. The next morning, Kevin and Nadia were escorted by a group of men taking a helicopter across the mountains and rivers of the Midwest. For security reasons, Kevin was blindfolded, so he had no clue where they were heading. When his blindfold was finally taken off, they'd already landed near a luxurious mansion after traveling for a few hours. As he looked around, Kevin was amazed to find dozens of men in suits quickly approaching them. Nadia, didn't you bring me here to refine the life prolongation pill for someone? Kevin asked. That's right, and this is where he lives, Nadia replied with a smile. Do you remember what I said to you before? As long as you're able to help this person, there will be great benefits in store for you. Are you talking about Herman Thompson? Kevin wondered. How did you guess? Nadia was surprised. To be able to live in such a secluded place like this in the Midwest, it could only be him. Kevin's expression was very serious. Although the Thompson family wasn't officially ranked in the Midwest, those who had known about them recognized that they were certainly a lot more powerful than the Sutherland family. Operating behind the scenes for many generations, they had ties to various companies and organizations across the region, including the Herbalist Society. By then, the men in suits had arrived in front of them. They were led by a young man who was no older than 25 years old. "Nadia, you're finally here. My father has been waiting for your arrival." The young man greeted her warmly. "Come with me. His condition is already very serious, so we must not waste any more time." The day after the Pearl family auction, a helicopter took Nadia and a blindfolded Kevin to the luxurious mansion of Herman Thompson, the patriarch of a powerful family with ties to various companies and organizations across the Midwest, including the Herbalist Society. Soon after arriving, they were greeted by a young man who told Nadia that Herman had been expecting her arrival. They quickly went inside the mansion. The man's name was Kyle Thompson, one of Herman Thompson's grandsons, but although he appeared very easygoing, he still ignored Kevin. In order to resolve this awkwardness, Nadia Alexander decided to speak up. "Kyle, let me introduce you to Kevin Williams. This is the herbalist that I found for your grandfather. His skill in herbalism is far above mine." Hearing this, Kyle looked at Kevin. After staring at him for more than 10 seconds, Kyle's eyes couldn't help but reveal a trace of disgust, especially when he saw Kevin wearing such poor clothes. "That's a good joke, Nadia. How can this person's herbalism skills be higher than yours? Look at how old he is. On top of that, he's wearing such tattered clothes. Don't tell me that you've been deceived by a trickster." Kyle's words were full of disdain. Nadia's facial expression changed when she heard him say this. Knowing how strong Kevin was, who could stop him if he decided to attack Kyle? Furthermore, he was the only one who could refine the life prolongation pill. What would happen to Herman Thompson if Kyle were to provoke Kevin? Nadia subtly glanced over at Kevin. Seeing that he didn't seem to be bothered by Kyle's insult, she secretly heaved a huge sigh of relief. "Kyle, I'm not joking with you. Kevin may be young, but his herbalism skills are beyond my reach, so you should really apologize to him." Nadia frowned slightly as she explained. She wasn't afraid of Kyle in the least. After all, she was from the same generation as his father. "Nadia, are you sure you're not mistaken?" Kyle couldn't believe his ears. The Thompson family members who were standing at the side were also shocked upon hearing this. After all, despite his young age, Kyle was well respected by everyone. "Your grandfather's condition is already quite serious. If we want to treat him, only Kevin can do it." Nadia tried her best to reassure the others. Unfortunately, Kevin wouldn't let the matter go just yet. He looked at Kevin with disdain and asked, "Did you even study herbal medicine? You look quite young for an herbalism expert. Have you ever even had a girlfriend?" Faced with this series of absurd questions, Kevin's face turned slightly red. "I've had some herbalism classes at the Healing Arts School. I'm actually married and I live at my wife's place." "Are you serious?" Kyle was obviously stunned by his response. He was trying his best to hold back his laughter. The others also looked at Kevin in disbelief. Who the hell did Nadia bring into our home? With his credentials, how are we supposed to believe that this young man is an expert? Even Nadia was at a loss for words. Kyle had obviously dug a hole on purpose, but why did Kevin fall for it so easily? She wanted to just cover his mouth at the moment. However, despite what Nadia and the others might be thinking, Kevin remained unbothered. After all, the insults he'd received in Chicago all these years were much worse than this. Kyle finally recovered his mood and decided to keep toying around with Kevin. "You mentioned that you live at your wife's place. Does this mean you're just a useless son-in-law who depends on her for everything?" In the blink of an eye, Kyle was laughing so hard that he almost couldn't stand up straight. "Nadia, you found a useless son-in-law to refine the life prolongation pill? It's not April Fool's Day yet, is it?" Despite this, the other Thompson family members were trying their best to hold back their laughter out of respect for Nadia. Meanwhile, Kevin only looked at him indifferently once again. Anyway, someone else had begged him on his behalf to refine the pill, so he decided to give Kyle a pass. "Kyle, I think you should give Kevin a chance. Although his background and experience may not be extensive, he won first place in the herbalist contest not long ago," Nadia remarked. "Nadia, can you stop messing around? The herbalist contest was just child's play. It was just one of the methods of selecting students with potential for the Herbalist Society. My grandfather's situation is a lot different, as it requires herbalist skills that can handle a real life-or-death scenario. I don't trust him." Although Kyle's mocking smile was gone, the disdain in his eyes was still quite visible. If it wasn't for his family background, Nadia really wanted to tear Kyle limb from limb. Suddenly, a powerful voice could be heard. "Is there something wrong, Kyle? Why didn't you return when I asked you to pick Nadia up?" After that, a middle-aged man quickly walked over to them. "Joseph, you came just in time. This is the herbalist I found for your father. But your son won't believe me and told me to forget about it. That being said, I leave the final decision to you." Nadia was immediately delighted to see Joseph, who was in line to be the Thompson family's leader one day. "Kyle, what's the matter with you? Don't you want your grandfather to get well?" Joseph asked his son with a slight frown on his face. "Dad, don't get angry. Listen to me. I've already interrogated this man. He's just a useless son-in-law with little training and experience in herbalism. Do you think such a person is worthy of helping Grandpa Thompson?" Kyle was no longer arrogant. His tone immediately became respectful. "What did you say? A useless son-in-law?" Joseph looked at Kevin and then turned to Nadia. "Nadia, the Thompson family has treated you well for many years. How could you make such a joke out of this grave situation?" Nadia tried to explain herself. But before she could even start, one of the Thompson family's attendants rushed over and said with a depressed face, "Sir, it's not good. Your father is dying." "What?" Both Joseph and Kyle immediately panicked. They no longer cared about what to say to Nadia as they quickly rushed upstairs to Herman Thompson's room. "Kevin, why don't we go and take a look too? Perhaps you can still save him," Nadia suggested. Herman Thompson had helped her a great deal over the years, so she really wanted to save him now during his time of need. Kevin nodded his head in agreement. The two of them then went upstairs in a hurry. Along the way, he carefully observed the layout of the Thompson family's mansion. When they arrived outside the room, they saw that it was filled with several Thompson family members surrounding an old man. Their sorrowful cries filled the air. "Father, please don't leave me." Joseph sat by Herman Thompson's bedside and cried out loudly. Everyone knew that the reason why the Thompson family had such a powerful reputation in the Midwest was all because of Herman Thompson. If he suffered an untimely death, then the foundation of the entire family would definitely be shaken, and the whole business empire that he had painstakingly built would risk collapsing within a very short period of time, as their enemies would certainly pounce on them like hungry wolves. "While he's still alive, give this pill immediately to Herman Thompson." Kevin's eyes kept scanning the surroundings as he handed a blue and green pill over to Nadia. "Is this the stabilizing pill? How did you get this?" Nadia asked in shock when she recognized the pill's color. "Now is not the time to talk about it. We have to stabilize his vitals first. He doesn't have much time, so you have to go inside now." Kevin hastily pushed Nadia into the room while he waited outside. Herman Thompson's face had turned purple. His body was trembling nonstop. "You have to give this pill to Mr. Thompson. This might be our only chance to save his life," Nadia anxiously said as she opened the palm of her right hand to reveal the stabilizing pill that Kevin had just given her. "Will it work?" Joseph, whose eyes were red from crying, quickly took the pill from Nadia and briefly inspected it. The other Thompson family members in the room all raised their heads and looked at Nadia, unable to say anything as their mouths hung open in surprise. "There's no time to waste. Regardless of whether it'll work or not, there's only one way to find out." Nadia's tone was very firm. Joseph gritted his teeth as all the other members of his family nervously watched. With no other option, he carefully put the stabilizing pill into Herman Thompson's mouth. Nadia also tightly clasped her hands as she said a quick prayer. The stabilizing pill was said to effectively stabilize someone's vital signs within 3 seconds. However, since she had no way of verifying whether the pill that Kevin had given her was real or not, she could only wait patiently and hope for the best. When the stabilizing pill entered Herman Thompson's body, he instantly stopped trembling and his face quickly returned to its natural skin complexion. After about half a minute, The bedside monitor indicated that all of his vital signs had calmed down to normal levels. "What a miracle! Nadia, you've really helped the Thompson family a lot this time. Thank you for saving my father's life." Joseph was so overwhelmed by joy that he gave Nadia a big hug. But Kevin still had more work to do if Herman Thompson's life was going to be saved. With Herman Thompson in critical condition, Kevin suddenly handed over a stabilizing pill to Nadia, who then took it over to Joseph. Despite not knowing whether it would work or not, Joseph put the pill into Herman Thompson's mouth with no other option or any time to spare. Thankfully, it worked, instantly restoring his vital signs to normal levels. Overjoyed by this, Joseph thanked Nadia for saving Herman Thompson and gave her a big hug. "Joseph," Nadia didn't know what to say. While she thought highly of Kevin, even she had her doubts about whether the stabilizing pill would work. Moreover, she suddenly realized that he was just observing from outside the room, and so she didn't want to take the credit for saving Herman Thompson's life. "How did it go, Nadia? It looked like the Thompson family was finally going to run out of luck this time," Kevin said as he casually walked into the room. These words instantly provoked the anger of the entire Thompson family. Nadia had just saved Herman Thompson's life, but this young man actually dared to insult her skills? On top of that, he even said that their family was having bad luck. "What is that useless son-in-law doing here? Who allowed you to step into this room?" Kyle immediately stood up from the bedside and rushed towards Kevin. "How dare you insult the Thompson family? Perhaps you're the one who's about to run into some bad luck." However, just as he stopped talking, Kevin suddenly punched Kyle right in the chest, causing him to fall to the floor. "Are you aware of the fact that you're a really annoying person?" Kevin said coldly as he stepped on Kyle. Kyle couldn't even speak as he tried to catch his breath. When they saw this, everyone in the room couldn't help but look on in shock, but no one made a move to attack Kevin right away. "Who on earth is this man, Nadia? Did you bring him here just to cause trouble with us?" Joseph's face turned completely serious. It had been many years since someone had dared to offend the Thompson family like that. "Joseph, don't get mad. This is Kevin Williams. He was actually the one who gave me the stabilizing pill just now." Nadia tried to calm him down and then added, "Like I said earlier, Kevin's herbalism skills are more advanced than mine. So I brought him here to refine a life prolongation pill for your father. But Kyle..." Even though Nadia didn't finish what she was saying, Joseph immediately understood what had happened. The entire room fell into silence at the same time, including the insufferably arrogant Kyle, who stopped struggling to get Kevin's foot off his chest. Nadia was the #1 herbalist in the Herbalist Society, and she was also the president of its southern branch. And when she said that Kevin's herbalist skills were above hers, Kyle thought that she was joking. But now she just revealed that the pill that saved Herman Thompson's life had actually come from Kevin. The one who was the most confused about all of this was Joseph. What Nadia just said was enough to prove that Kevin wasn't an ordinary person, but didn't his son tell him earlier that he was only a useless son-in-law? Which of the two should he believe? "Joseph, while the stabilizing pill has managed to stabilize your father's condition for now, it's just a Band-Aid solution. Nonetheless, I can assure you that Kevin can really refine a life prolongation pill." If Nadia had been skeptical at first, she was completely sure by now. If he managed to make a stabilizing pill, was anything at all impossible for Kevin? "No, I can't believe this," Kyle thought to himself as his eyes revealed a look of despair. Instead of helping his son up, Joseph quickly walked over to Kevin and lowered his head. "Mr. Williams, I'm very sorry my son had offended you. This was all my fault for not teaching him well. On behalf of the entire Thompson family, please accept our deepest apologies. I hope you can be kind enough to let my son go. Also, I would like to ask for your help in refining a life prolongation pill for my father." "Why should I accept your apology?" Kevin replied indifferently as he looked Joseph right in the eye. Kevin had to admit that Joseph was a powerful and wise man. Despite seeing Kevin punch his son right in front of him, he didn't seem angry at all. However, the other Thompson family members were all shocked to hear this exchange. After all, Joseph was next in line to become their family's leader and could make someone pay with just a snap of his fingers. Putting aside the fact that he had taken the initiative to set aside his pride and apologize, this young man still refused to accept it. "Mr. Williams, please forgive us." Joseph gritted his teeth and continued. "If you can save my father, you'll be a distinguished guest of the Thompson family, and we'll never forget your great act of kindness, sir." In order to save his father, Joseph had gone all out. Compared to Herman Thompson, Kyle was nothing. As long as Kevin was willing to refine the life prolongation pill, Joseph didn't care if he kicked Kyle in the stomach or even broke his legs. "Didn't your son tell me to forget about it? I promised myself that I wouldn't agree to refining the life prolongation pill if someone doesn't believe that I can do it. And a man's word is a promise that cannot be broken." Kevin slowly lifted his foot up from Kyle's chest. These words caused Joseph's hopeful expression to change instantly as sweat began to trickle down from his forehead. Right at the moment when he'd found a long-term solution for his father, it was suddenly taken away from him because of his son's arrogance. The rest of the Thompson family members also felt uncomfortable, remembering how they had almost laughed at Kevin earlier. Some of them started to scratch their heads and timidly avoid his gaze. "Is there really no other way around this, Mr. Williams? Perhaps there's still room for negotiation in your heart?" Joseph asked with some unwillingness. Kevin pointed at Kyle and replied, "I'm a man of my word, so unless he kneels down and begs me, my decision is final." "Dream on! You're just a useless son-in-law. What right do you have to make me kneel down? Also, how can we be so sure that you actually have the ability to refine pills? For all we know, you could have just stolen that other pill from someone." Kyle was so furious that his face was turning red. The Thompson family members were faced with a dilemma. Although it would be humiliating for Kyle, it shouldn't be a problem for him to kneel down and beg for help if it meant saving Herman Thompson. However, Joseph started to doubt Kevin's skills again because of his son's comments. "Mr. Williams, please forgive me for asking. Can you really refine pills? It looks like you don't believe me either." Kevin shook his head as he headed for the door. Before he reached the door, Kevin brought out a blood-red pill from his pocket. As he subtly waved it around for everyone to see, a strong fragrance filled the entire room. "Kevin, is that the life prolongation pill? Do you actually have a refined pill in your hand?" Nadia quickly rushed towards Kevin as she wanted to get a closer look. At the same time, both Joseph and Kyle's jaws dropped, and they wore a sorry look on their faces. How is this possible? Kyle couldn't believe what he had just heard. However, Kevin didn't say a word. He casually put the pill back in his pocket and walked out the door as Nadia followed closely behind him and kept asking questions. Suddenly, Joseph stepped in front of Kyle and slapped him hard on the face. "Dad, why did you hit me?" Kyle was confused. "You deserve much more than that. You're lucky to still be my son right now." Joseph fumed. "How could you do such a thing? You knew that pill could save your grandfather's life, but you just had to let your pride get in the way. Now that you've angered him, what do you think we should do?" Just then, Nadia, whose face was full of excitement, hurriedly walked back into the room. "Nadia, has Mr. Williams calmed down?" Joseph asked nervously. "We overheard everything, and Kevin was impressed that you had the courage to scold Kyle in front of the other Thompson family members. He felt like you were being a true son to your own father, so your actions have saved Herman Thompson's life." Nadia slowly opened her palm and showed him the life prolongation pill. "Should I give it to my father immediately?" Joseph gratefully asked. "Mr. Williams is waiting for you downstairs, so you should go there now. Rest assured I'll be the one to give this pill to your father." Nadia's heart was filled with admiration for Kevin. "Thank you." Joseph straightened his clothes and quickly ran downstairs. Kevin had been sitting quietly on a chair by the grand piano. Joseph tried to calm himself as he slowly walked towards Kevin and greeted him respectfully. "Mr. Williams." "We need to talk," Kevin replied with a serious expression. "Mr. Williams, thank you for saving my father. You also saved the entire Thompson family in the process.
We shall be forever grateful for the kindness that you've bestowed upon us."
Joseph was about to shake his hand, however, Kevin immediately stopped him. "Don't be in such a hurry to thank me. Your father isn't completely out of danger yet." Kevin's eyes had been scanning the surroundings as if he was searching for something.
"Why is that? Is there something else wrong with him?"
Joseph was concerned. Kevin sighed faintly. He seemed to want to say something, but was hesitant to speak up.
"If you have something to say, just say it."
Joseph was so anxious that he couldn't stand still. "Well, now that you mention it, has your father been seriously ill for the past 2 months?" Kevin asked with a slight frown.
"Yes. How did you know?"
Joseph asked in surprise. Instead of answering him, Kevin continued. "I'm assuming it started out with him simply having a hard time sleeping, and during those restless nights he had a tendency to talk in his sleep as well. Then when his condition began to worsen, he developed a fever that never went away, causing his head to swell up and his body to shut down into a coma until waking up about half a month ago in a severely weakened state." Joseph was speechless. How had Kevin been able to pinpoint Herman Thompson's symptoms so accurately? He figured that there were only 2 possibilities. Either Kevin was a truly powerful expert with both high herbalist skills and excellent medical skills, or he had been scheming with the Thompson family enemies all along. However, Joseph didn't know which category Kevin belonged to. "Let me ask you one more thing. Have you yourself been waking up from your sleep and feeling restless recently? And from time to time, do you feel like you're having weird, lucid dreams?" Kevin saw how tense Joseph had become, and he sighed helplessly.
"Mr. Williams."
Joseph seemed to have heard something terrifying as he took a few steps back from him. What Kevin said was his secret, and he'd never told anyone that he was currently suffering from the same early symptoms as his father. "I think I now know the root of your and your father's illness. Thankfully, I believe that some harmony pills should solve the problem," Kevin exclaimed.
"Harmony pills?"
Joseph was stunned. He'd never heard of this type of medication before. And what problem did he and Herman Thompson have? When Joseph thanked Kevin for saving his father by giving him the life prolongation pill, Kevin warned him that Herman Thompson wasn't completely out of danger yet. After accurately pinpointing the symptoms that both Herman and Joseph were experiencing, Kevin thought he'd figured out the root cause of their illness, which he believed that a harmony pill would address. To confirm if I'm right, I have one last question. Have the 2 of you ever tried the life prolongation pill before? Kevin looked Joseph in the eye.
"My father and I have both taken an experimental version of the life prolongation pill that the Herbalist Society was developing about 2 months apart from each other. To tell you the truth, Nadia actually advised us not to take them since they might have some side effects. But we were so excited about the prospect of gaining a new edge over our enemies that we were willing to take the risk," Joseph admitted. "Just as I thought. The life prolongation pill can be quite tricky to refine. While both the renewal grass and heavenly flower herbs are safe ingredients on their own, even the slightest error when mixing dosages of the 2 can cause unintended side effects. And this is precisely why you and your father have been experiencing the symptoms that I mentioned. If left untreated, I'm afraid that you might end up just like him in about 2 months' time." Kevin sighed as he nodded his head. Joseph was stunned when he heard what Kevin said. "You did mention that you had something that could cure us, didn't you?"
As the name suggests, the Harmony pill works to eliminate potent toxins and restore natural balance within your body. Luckily, I happen to have a couple with me, so taking one each should be able to cure both of you completely. Kevin smiled as he handed Joseph 2 lavender-colored pills. Joseph was at a loss for words.
"Mr. Williams, I can't thank you enough."
Kevin waved his hand and didn't let him continue. "I'm just glad that I was able to find the root of your illness and come up with a solution. Anyway, I can't stay here for long as I still have something to deal with. If you guys need anything else, just come to Chicago and look for me." Joseph nodded in understanding and immediately sent for his men to arrange for Kevin's helicopter ride back to Chicago. He then told Kevin that Nadia would stay behind to monitor his and Herman Thompson's condition. As for the life prolongation pill, Kevin made sure that he brought back the renewal grass and heavenly flower herbs that they bought at the Pearl family auction. With these, he could finally learn how to refine the life prolongation pill when he got back home. After all, the one that was given to Herman Thompson had actually been refined by the Night King, and he had kept it in his pocket in case of an emergency. Meanwhile, back in Chicago, Lily was still at home, sitting anxiously on the couch. Kevin had yet to reply to any of her messages, so she was really worried that something bad had happened to her husband. Suddenly, there was a hurried knock on the door. Dorothy immediately went out to the kitchen and walked toward the door to answer it.
"Who is it? And why are you knocking when there's a doorbell? If I see any damage on this door, you're going to pay for it."
Dorothy's face fell when she opened the door. Grandma Jones, whom she had not seen for a long time, was standing there with her head slightly lowered. Next to her was Jason Jones, and more than a dozen members of the Jones family were standing behind them.
"What are you doing here?"
Dorothy asked in confusion. She knew that the rest of the Jones family would never come to their house for no reason, so she could tell that something wasn't right with their unexpected arrival.
"Dorothy, is Lily home?"
Grandma Jones asked with a smile.
"Why are you looking for her? Is it because of the shares again?"
Dorothy's face turned bitter and she pursed her lips.
"Those shares belong to my daughter. No one will be able to take them away from her." "Dorothy, what are you talking about? The reason why we came here today is because we all just wanted to see how the two of you were doing. Why don't you welcome us in?"
Grandma Jones' tone was very gentle, as if she wasn't angry at Dorothy's accusations at all. This was something that had never happened before. "Who is it?" Lily got up from the couch and walked over to them, and when she saw who it was, she also asked in surprise, "Grandma Jones, why are you here?" A few minutes later, Grandma Jones was sitting on the couch, while Jason and the rest of the Jones family members stood by her side. "Grandma Jones, what brings you here this time?" Lily asked in confusion. Grandma Jones looked at her granddaughter and sighed deeply.
"Lily, we're family after all, aren't we? Now, can you please ask Kevin to save the Jones family?"
Recently, the Jones family's business had been facing some struggles. Although it was no longer on the verge of bankruptcy like before, it wasn't exactly flourishing either. Their business partners, who had been very respectful towards the Jones family in the past, were now taking advantage of their relationship for their own selfish interests, making them feel like they were being bullied into a corner as a result. When they heard this, Lily and Dorothy looked at each other with some doubt in their hearts. Were they telling the truth? And of all people, why were they looking for Kevin to help them?
"Did I hear you wrong? You want Kevin to save the Jones family? What can that piece of trash do?"
Dorothy asked in surprise. "That's right, Grandma Jones. What exactly is going on?" Lily asked in confusion.
"Why are you two acting so cold towards us today? Lily, you grew up under the care of the Jones family, and our family has treated Kevin well these past few years,"
Grandma Jones tried to explain.
"Grandma Jones has personally come here to humbly ask for your help today. What else do you two want?"
Jason sneered. His eyes were filled with extreme unwillingness. However, he knew that they had no choice but to be here. "Jason, what do you mean? Can you explain the situation more clearly?" Lily didn't want to waste any more time talking to him.
"What are you guys still pretending for? How long were you planning to hide the fact that Kevin is the president of Williams Media from us?"
Jason was beginning to lose his composure. "Wait, what?" Lily and Dorothy stood up in surprise at the same time. The Jones family members were getting impatient, and a trace of displeasure flashed across Grandma Jones's face. "Jason, stop trying to mess with me," Lily said with a distraught look on her face. "If you're here just to make fun of me, then I'll have to ask everyone to leave immediately. Although our family isn't very rich, we won't tolerate you bullying us like this."
"Lily, I have to say that I really underestimated you. You actually quietly got close to a real big shot."
Jason shook his head in disbelief.
"And that Kevin is pretty devious. He's been living and eating off the Jones family for so long under the guise that he's just a freeloading lowlife. And now he's returning our kindness with ingratitude? He may be rich, but he's still a useless son-in-law as far as we're concerned.
It's not April Fool's Day today, is it? Jason, what are you saying all this nonsense for? Although Lily said this out loud, deep down it made her think. The last time she saw Kevin, his body and demeanor seemed to have changed. Was there any truth to what Jason was telling her? Jason was about to say something else, but he was stopped by Grandma Jones. She took a long, hard look at Lily and her mother. Jason is telling the truth. Kevin is indeed the CEO of Williams Media. Although Grandma Jones was reluctant to admit it, he had something that she badly wanted.
Mom, your joke isn't funny at all. Kevin is a useless person. If he's the president of Williams Media, then I'm the richest mother-in-law in Chicago.
Dorothy didn't even believe half of what she just said. Just a few days ago, she'd scolded Kevin and driven him out of the house to look for the Night King, and until now he hadn't come back. How could that useless piece of trash be the president of Williams Media?
All right, we've had enough of this stupid act of yours. The next time you see Kevin, tell him that he must take out half of his Williams Media shares and give them to the Jones family. It's the least he can do to repay all the kindness our family has shown him over the past few years,
Jason flatly demanded. No one would have thought that when Jason said this, his heart would be filled with pain. After all, who knew that the man he had been casually bullying and mocking this entire time would turn out to be so powerful? He shuddered at the thought of having to beg for his mercy one day, knowing that Kevin wouldn't forgive him that easily. Grandma Jones then spoke up once again. Lily, I know that you're a kind-hearted person. I'm sure you also can't bear to see our family struggling like this. Isn't that so? Look at your relatives standing here in front of you. Don't tell me that you want to see them sleep on the streets one day. Lily replied, Grandma Jones, I think this matter... Grandma Jones didn't let her finish and continued. I know that Williams Media belongs to Kevin, but he can rest assured that I won't ask him to hand over his shares for nothing. When the Jones family becomes successful once again, we'll never forget his contribution during our time of need.
Mom, I really think you've confused Kevin with someone else. How could that useless son-in-law of mine be the president of the Williams Media when he lived off my daughter's money for the past 3 years?
Dorothy had no idea why Grandma Jones kept insisting this absurd story was true. Was her age finally getting to her? Grandma Jones, with all due respect, I don't think what you're saying is possible. Kevin is still working for someone else's company. Lily lowered her head and looked down at the floor. As far as she knew, although Kevin did have some money on hand, it was surely nothing compared to what the president of Williams Media would have. Lily had begun to feel like she was having the weirdest day of her life. All of this nonsense was truly stranger than fiction. Was she having a bad dream or something? If only Kevin were there to set things straight. Grandma Jones, Jason, and some other Jones family members had paid a visit to Lily and Dorothy's home. After finding out that Kevin was the president of Williams Media, Grandma Jones wanted him to save their struggling family business as repayment for years of being a useless son-in-law to them. However, since Lily and Dorothy still weren't aware of Kevin's true identity, they kept thinking that the Jones family was just mocking them the entire time. Feeling like this was the weirdest day of her life, Lily was wondering if she was stuck in a bad dream.
In what reality would Kevin be the president of Williams Media? This has been fun and all, but I think it's best if you all leave right now. Besides, it's getting late and I can't cook for so many people.
Dorothy didn't want to waste any more time dealing with the Jones family. Grandma Jones, we appreciate you coming all the way to visit us here, but Mom's right. If you have nothing else to say to us, it's time for you to go. Lily gestured for the door. Although both Dorothy and Lily were very straightforward with their words, the Jones family had taken this the wrong way. With such a rich and powerful husband, it seemed to them like Lily was no longer looking out for the family's best interests. Grandma Jones's breathing became rapid, and her body began to tremble due to anger.
The two of you really have no conscience. Are you so successful now that you can afford to abandon your family?
Lily, how can you dare to do such a terrible thing to our family?
Grandma, didn't I tell you long ago that Lily is an ingrate? Do you finally believe me now?
Jason sneered as he tried to comfort Grandma Jones. Lily sighed and didn't know what to say anymore. On the other hand, Dorothy didn't want to bother with them anymore and walked back into the kitchen. Lily stammered, "Grandma Jones,
No need to say another word. Today's matter is settled. Kevin must hand over Williams Media to the Jones family. He's lied to us for too long, and this is the only way that he can make up for it."
Grandma Jones forcefully interrupted her.
Lily, don't tell me you still don't know Kevin's true identity.
Jason suddenly seemed to have thought of this possibility. Why don't you go out and ask around? Who doesn't know about how the useless son-in-law of the Jones family is actually the CEO of Williams Media? Everyone in Chicago is calling our family blind for being completely oblivious to it. What he said wasn't wrong. After all, the news of the Power Pill auction and what happened in the Salix Leaf Hotel had spread across the entire city. Kevin's identity was no longer a secret. So, is it really true? Lily's small face instantly turned pale. Overhearing this, Dorothy rushed out of the kitchen and excitedly grabbed Jason's shoulders.
You're not lying, are you? Can you repeat what you just said?
Surprised by this, Jason sighed and repeated,
Kevin is the one and only CEO of Williams Media. Everyone in Chicago already knows this fact by now.
Oh my God, that useless son-in-law has been pretending to be poor in front of me all this time? I've always been so good to him.
Dorothy stumbled a few steps back before leaning against the wall. No matter how the people of the Jones family looked at her, they all felt that she was crying tears of joy at the moment. Lily was trying her best to stay calm. Kevin hasn't come home for a few days. We should wait for him to come back first before we discuss this matter. Unless Kevin would personally admit this to her face, she still wouldn't believe it no matter what. Grandma Jones and Jason looked at each other, unable to react to the situation in front of them.
It's fine if he's not here. Your place is big enough anyway, so it won't be a problem for Grandma and me to stay here for a few days.
Jason casually sat down on the couch. He then put his feet up on the coffee table and said arrogantly,
What are you waiting for, Lily? Go and get me a glass of soda.
Jason had already made up his mind. As soon as Kevin came back, he would make him hand over Williams Media no matter what. Once that happened, everything would become his, instantly turning him into Chicago's newest rising star. As he imagined all the beautiful possibilities in the future, Jason couldn't help but drool at the thought of it. Meanwhile, Thomas Williams was sitting in the study room of the Williams family mansion in New York, reading through all of the information he just collected. Williams Media had sold over 100 Power Pills just a few days before. Although the Williams family was currently training their strength with the secret help of the Union, their overall strength wasn't increasing very quickly. What if he could obtain the Power Pill recipe for himself? Thomas suddenly smiled bitterly when he thought of this. Now that the relationship between Kevin and his family was so tense, how could he be willing to come back? "Why do you look so pale and gloomy?" Laura Williams walked in aggressively. "You're now the Williams family patriarch. You should be beaming with joy."
"You can take a look for yourself."
Thomas turned his laptop around as he nursed a headache. Laura was stunned. How is this possible? Where did that piece of trash get so many Power Pills?
"Other than the fact that he knows how to refine medicinal pills, I can't think of any other reason."
Thomas looked at his wife coldly. Deep in his eyes, there was a viciousness that couldn't be described with words. "Can't we just send some people to capture Kevin so he can hand his recipe over to us?" Laura's face gradually became serious. Thomas could only sigh when he heard her. It wasn't like they'd never seen Kevin's strength before. Capturing someone as powerful as him would be no easy feat. "If we can't abduct Kevin, how about we go after his wife? As long as we have something that we can use against him, we don't have to worry about getting the Power Pill recipe," Laura suggested with a smirk. Ever since she started training, she finally understood the benefits of being strong. Rather than just being a pretty face, she would also be feared and respected by others.
Isn't that too much? Thomas frowned and asked. No matter what, Kevin was still his nephew. It would be too despicable of them to drag his innocent wife into this. What's wrong with that? Kevin was originally a member of the Williams family. You raised him for so many years and you even gave him Williams Media. Isn't it only natural for that piece of trash to give you something in return? Laura gave her husband a deep look. The Williams family should rise back to the top by any means possible. If that's what it takes to get the job done, then I don't see a problem with it. Thomas remained silent and sighed heavily. Besides, why can't you handle it? Aren't you man enough to fight for the Williams family, let alone your wife? Laura laughed in disdain. Thomas, why did I even marry you? You've become such a waste of a husband that I'm beginning to regret this marriage. What happened to you? Back then, you could even...
Shut up!
Thomas suddenly covered Laura's mouth to keep her quiet. He then looked around cautiously and relaxed a little after not seeing anyone.
You better take those words back,
Thomas said as he took his hand away from her mouth. Laura glanced at him with contempt. Prove yourself first and do as I say. Find someone to capture Lily. When the time comes, Kevin will surely exchange the power pill recipe for her. Thomas tightly clenched his fists. After struggling for a while, he finally made up his mind. He thought to himself,
Kevin, I'm doing this for the sake of the family. You mustn't blame me for what I'm about to do.
At that very moment, a helicopter slowly landed back in Chicago. As Kevin sleepily got out of it, he suddenly received a phone call from Nadia. Hey, I just got back. What's up? Kevin stretched his arms comfortably. That's good to know. Now don't forget what I told you, Nadia said reluctantly. Kevin almost got a headache when she mentioned it. Back at the Thompson family mansion, Nadia immediately followed him right after seeing the life prolongation pill in Kevin's hand. Thinking that he was the one who had refined the pill, she actually wanted to learn herbalism under him. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Kevin then ended the call and immediately went back to Williams Media. Upon arriving at his office, he called Mitchell Cook and the others over to tell them in detail about going to Detroit, as well as his subsequent plans for Chicago. Then he dropped by Corwin Tower to refine dozens of power pills, as he figured that these would come in handy in case of an emergency. When Kevin was done with that, he finally returned home to Lily. But as soon as he entered the apartment, he was completely stunned to find Jason leisurely lying on the couch as if the place belonged to him. Kevin could tell that something had happened between Lily and the Jones family in his absence.
Looks like CEO Williams has finally returned home. Jason glanced at him lightly. There's no need to act so formally around me. Why don't you sit beside me on the couch?
Where's my wife? Kevin didn't even bother to look at him.
She's talking with Grandma upstairs.
Jason crossed his legs and smiled.
Kevin, I must admit that you're really good at hiding things. I can't believe you managed to conceal your identity as the president of Williams Media from us for so long.
Upon hearing this, Kevin sighed. He just wanted to go to Lily right now.
To be honest, this is actually a good thing. Since everyone is already used to you being such a useless person, you should just hand over the company to us,
Jason sneered. Kevin was almost angered by these words as he shook his head and started walking upstairs.
Hey, I'm still talking to you. Didn't you hear what I just said?
Jason suddenly stood up from the couch.
Stop right there, you piece of trash.
You seem to be mistaken about one thing. This is our home. If you yell at me like that again, I can kick you out. Kevin glanced at him indifferently. Jason really didn't know when to shut up sometimes.
You got guts, Kevin. Seems that you've gained a lot of confidence now that your secret's been exposed to the public. But don't think that you can turn the tables around for long just because you have Williams Media. Now that you've had some fun in the limelight, it's time to hand over the company and let the Jones family manage it. After all, you owe us big time for being a useless son-in-law all these years,
Jason demanded. In his mind, Jason already had everything planned out. As soon as he got the company, he would host a huge party and invite all the influential people in Chicago to celebrate his arrival.
After Kevin finally arrived at home, he was surprised to find Jason lying on the couch. Jason revealed that the Jones family had already found out about his identity as the president of Williams Media, then demanded that he hand over the company to them as repayment for all his years living off them as a useless son-in-law. In his mind, Jason already had plans of throwing a huge party to celebrate Chicago's newest rising star once the company was his. "Are you out of your mind?" Kevin laughed.
Kevin, if you know what's best for you, just do as I say. Perhaps I'll even let you work as my personal assistant once I become CEO of Williams Media. Come to think of it, I should change its names to Jones Media. Jason was getting arrogant. Besides, what are you going to do about it? You can talk all you want, but you don't have the guts to throw me out of this house.
"You don't think I dare?" Kevin sneered. Before Jason could react, Kevin grabbed him by the clothes on his back and threw him out of the door like trash. After falling hard on the floor in the hallway, Jason helplessly winced in pain and curled up into a ball. What a waste of time. Kevin dusted off his hands and closed the door. When he turned around, he suddenly saw Lily, Grandma Jones, and Dorothy all coming down from upstairs. "It's good that you're all here. What do you want to eat? I'll make it right away." Kevin walked towards the kitchen with a broad smile on his face. However, Lily suddenly stopped him. She stared at Kevin with a confused look on her face. "Grandma Jones has something to tell you." "If you have something to say, just say it." Kevin didn't have a good impression of Grandma Jones, knowing that she never liked him and how she always made Lily's life difficult.
Kevin, I get why you're being so cold to me right now. It's all my fault. I never showed much concern for you in the past, but you also have to understand where I was coming from. I did that to give you the motivation to fight."
Grandma Jones slowly sat down on the couch. "Am I supposed to thank you for that?" Kevin shook his head helplessly. His sarcastic reaction made the smile on Grandma Jones's face disappear.
"Kevin, look at you. You've been married to Lily for a few years already, and yet you still don't have a child. When are you going to have one? I can't wait to have a great-grandchild."
"Where are you going with this, Grandma Jones?" Kevin raised his eyebrows slightly as he tried to play along. Based on what Jason said earlier, he already figured why Grandma Jones was acting this way right now. He thought to himself, "The Jones family must be daydreaming again if they think they'll get my company."
"Kevin, I know you've been busy with your company's business and don't have much time to spend with Lily, but while I think that it's important to make money, families should always come first."
Grandma Jones felt that her words were reasonable, so she didn't even pause for a moment and continued.
"Thankfully, I've thought of a great solution. Why don't you leave Williams Media to the Jones family so you can have more time to spend with Lily? That way, the two of you can finally focus on consummating your marriage and not delay the joy of being parents because of other things."
Kevin looked at Lily and found that her face had gone red from embarrassment, while Dorothy seemed to have other thoughts in her mind as she avoided everyone's gaze.
"Kevin, for everyone's best interest, you need to leave the company for the Jones family to manage it. After you have a child with Lily, we will surely return Williams Media to you. This way, your family and career won't be in conflict with each other."
Everything Grandma Jones said seemed to be logical. "Grandma Jones, are you feeling unwell?" Kevin asked plainly. Although Kevin didn't know how she found out about his identity, he knew one thing. The Jones family wanted to get his company for free, and he had absolutely no plans of letting that happen. Did Grandma Jones think that he would be that simple and easy to deceive?
"What are you saying? I'm just thinking about you and Lily," Grandma Jones said unhappily.
"If you're not in good health, you should go to the hospital for a checkup. Coincidentally, I know a very good doctor who can totally help you," Kevin subtly teased.
"Kevin, what do you mean?"
Grandma Jones's face twisted up. She was so distraught. She was determined to get Williams Media today. And for the sake of the Jones family's future, Grandma Jones was willing to use underhanded tactics just to get what she wanted. What she didn't know, though, was that, thanks to Jason, Kevin had already seen through her act even before she started talking. "Grandma Jones, do you really think I'm that stupid?" Williams Media is mine. Why should I give it to the Jones family? Besides, you don't have to worry about my wife and me. So while we appreciate your concern, you can just go back to taking care of your own matters from now on." Kevin crossed his arms and leaned against the wall. One had to admit that the Jones family's eyes were bigger than their stomach. It was just that they didn't have the ability to carry out any of their ambitious plans.
Kevin, how dare you? Don't think that you're so amazing just because you're in charge of Williams Media. No matter what, I'm still your grandmother. How can you speak to me with such an attitude?
Grandma Jones could no longer hold it in.
Besides, Williams Media is such a big company. How can you manage it well? You're just a useless son-in-law of the Jones family. Instead of letting it slowly burn to the ground in your hands, why don't you let us manage it? Think of it as you returning the favor for all those years that you lived off our money.
She originally wanted to have a proper discussion with Kevin, but she didn't expect him to be so ungrateful. "Grandma Jones, out of respect, I'm trying my best not to laugh my head off here," Kevin sneered. "Please don't use your morals to trick me. I'm not falling for that insincere shtick of yours." Grandma Jones was seething at this point. Up until now, she thought she'd done such a good job convincing Kevin that she was doing this for his sake and not hers. "Let me make this clear. Williams Media is mine. Even if it goes bankrupt tomorrow, it's still my company. What does it have to do with the Jones family?" Kevin shook his head in disappointment. "Besides, I've already repaid the so-called kindness of the Jones family. Do you really think that your family has relied on its own strength to survive since the last time Tyler Dawn came to your mansion?" Grandma Jones slammed her hand hard on the coffee table.
That's enough. You have no reason to object to this matter. Williams Media must be handed over to the Jones family immediately,
Grandma Jones demanded. In her eyes, Williams Media was like a box of deep-dish pizza that had been delivered right to her doorstep. There was absolutely no reason for her not to eat it. Even just a slice of its shares would catapult the Jones family's power and influence in Chicago. Do you want to take it by force? Be my guest. That'll depend on whether the Jones family has the ability or not. Kevin's eyes turned cold. He really wanted to ask Grandma Jones about one thing. What was this kindness that she kept harping about? Didn't the Jones family treat him like trash before? Could she really be suffering from dementia? Suddenly, the door was kicked open by someone. Jason, who was still doubled over in pain, slowly limped in.
Kevin, how dare you do that to me? Are you okay, Grandma?
I don't care about anything you said today. You have to give us control of Williams Media right now. Otherwise, you must immediately divorce Lily.
Grandma Jones couldn't sit still, and she stood up from the couch. These words undoubtedly stirred Kevin's nerves. You're now using my wife to threaten me?
So what if I did?
In order to obtain Williams Media, Grandma Jones suddenly couldn't care less about their marriage anymore, as the tense atmosphere in the room had instantly reached its peak. Jason revealed a proud smile. He felt that his grandmother's threat had truly struck a chord with Kevin this time. They both knew that Lily was his weak spot. Lily, do you want me to hand over Williams Media? Kevin suddenly broke the silence. Well, I do have shares in the Jones family. Kevin, even if you hand the company over to the Jones family, it's actually not a big deal. At the very least, I'll give you my shares if you want them. What's mine is yours, Lily said without even daring to raise her head to look him in the eye.
Why should you give it to him? Don't be stupid, Lily. Do you still not know what kind of person Kevin is? This piece of trash is nothing without that company. When he hands over Williams Media, you can kick him out of the house and find a better husband.
Dorothy couldn't help but stick her nose in. She had thought very clearly about this. Since her daughter was also part of the Jones family, they would benefit from the situation either way, with the added bonus of getting rid of Kevin if they were to obtain Williams Media from him. In any case, she'd hit the jackpot, and she would be able to live the extravagant lifestyle that she had always imagined for the rest of her life. I really can't believe you guys. I guess some things never change. Kevin suddenly laughed. Initially, he thought the people of the Jones family were at most heartless, but now it seemed like they were completely shameless.
They still treated him the same way as before. "What are you laughing at?" Grandma Jones coldly reprimanded him. "I've already prepared the equity transfer agreement. If you truly care about Lily, sign it immediately and I can guarantee that I'll give you some allowance to spend every month."
Did you hear that, Kevin? If you sign the agreement, Grandma will make sure to treat you very well. Think about it carefully. By leaving the company to us, you can live a better life and spend every day eating free food. Furthermore, you don't need to worry about anything since the Jones family will take care of you. Jason tried to make his case in a much friendlier tone. Also, as the strength of the Jones family increases, your reputation will also naturally rise, and people outside will no longer think that you're just a useless son-in-law who's not good enough for Lily. It's like killing two birds with one stone.
"So how about it, Kevin? Will you sign the agreement or not?" Grandma Jones eagerly asked.
Kevin didn't answer her question. He just took out his phone and walked into the kitchen to make a call. Thinking that Kevin had admitted defeat and was calling to inform Williams Media about their agreement, Grandma Jones and Jason couldn't help but feel proud of what they had just pulled off. When the Jones family first received the news of Kevin's identity as president of Williams Media, everyone was incredibly shocked and in disbelief. How could a piece of trash that they could always casually belittle suddenly become richer and more powerful than all of them? How could they endure this shame? This was simply unacceptable. Therefore, Grandma Jones hatched a plan with Jason. She decided she would have to take everything from Kevin's hands no matter what the cost. Kindly summarize all the recent business activities by the Jones family and send it to me in 20 minutes. After saying this, Kevin hung up the phone and went back to the living room. "Lily, let's see if you still have any shares left in the Jones family," Kevin said coldly. When they heard this, Lily could immediately sense that something wasn't right as Grandma Jones and Jason's expressions had suddenly changed. Meanwhile, Dorothy just stood there blankly and had no clue about what was going to happen next. When Kevin returned home to see Lily, he was surprised to see Grandma Jones and Jason in the apartment. They were trying to force him to turn over Williams Media to repay them for all that he'd done for them over the years. Of course, Kevin had no intention of doing any such thing. 10 days before all this, another building in Chicago had been bought by the Central Alternative Healing Academy. The purpose of this building was to set up a stronghold for their organization to use in the future. All the people from the 9 remaining major organizations were sitting in the dark room. The Union was notably absent.
It's been a few days and Kevin hasn't brought us the power pill yet. Did he run away and hide?
Jeffrey Bowie said worriedly.
"It shouldn't be possible. I just saw his mother-in-law 2 days ago, so I'm sure Kevin hasn't left Chicago yet. If he's in hiding, it should only be temporary."
Paul Vaughn leisurely sipped his espresso.
The power pill is incredibly important to us. It has to be controlled by the 9 great organizations. The Union's elders have broken through to another power level, and the overall strength of the group has increased tremendously. If we can't get the pills, I'm afraid we'll be at a serious disadvantage in the future,
Wayne Ford said with a slight frown on his face.
"The Union is just a weak group of women. Once we get the power pill, the 9 schools will be able to eliminate them in an instant,"
Jeffrey Bowie said disapprovingly and with more than a hint of sexism. One of the group leaders who had been silent until that moment suddenly said,
"Actually, Kevin isn't that frightening all by himself. The main reason is that his teacher's power base is too overwhelming, and we don't even know anything about his background."
The entire room instantly fell silent. The Night King's power had them extremely terrified.
"Have you forgotten our main purpose in coming to Chicago right now?"
A man sitting in the dark corner of the room suddenly spoke up. His words instantly made the faces of everyone there turn serious. The 10 great organizations had come to Chicago together for the ultimate showdown between good and evil. It was like everyone had a great weight sitting on top of them, and they couldn't breathe. As an honorable group, they swore to protect thousands of people with their very lives. They would never allow the evil powers to win and risk the future of the entire world.
The urgent matter at hand is to increase the strength of all the major groups as soon as possible. I believe that if Kevin refuses to hand over the power pill, then we'll have to take drastic measures. For example, we can capture his family and force him to hand over the power pills."
Paul Vaughn's tone was very firm.
"This isn't good at all. His methods are too despicable. It's not something that we would normally do if we still wanted to call ourselves honorable,"
Jeffrey Bowie said with some hesitation.
"I think that approach is wrong. We have to keep our priorities in sight. If Kevin and his family were to be sacrificed to be able to protect the happiness and stability of all living beings in the world, no matter how you look at it, this is the right move to make."
Wayne Ford was very supportive of Paul Vaughn's idea. A few seconds later, all the people in the room nodded their heads in agreement, but they were probably the only ones who knew exactly what they were thinking. Two older gentlemen stood on the beach, looking out at the water. They had a relaxed and powerful calmness about them. If Kevin had been there, he would have been surprised to find out that one of them was the Night King and the other was Wayne Ford from the Healing Arts School.
"I never thought that you would take in a student at your age."
Ford stroked his chin while he spoke thoughtfully.
"After experiencing the ups and downs of life, I have a few more years left to conceal my strength and bide my time. The young man has unmatched potential and qualities."
The Night King suddenly paused and slowly raised his head to look up at the clear blue sky.
"Kevin is the chosen one. In the future, he'll play a pivotal role in our upcoming battle with the evil forces in the world."
Wayne Ford was genuinely scared of the Night King. They'd known each other for many years, and he knew very well what level the man had attained in his development. For as long as he could remember, the Night King had never spoken like this about anyone.
"I can see that you think highly of him," Wayne Ford said very stoically.
He'd only seen Kevin 2 or 3 times. Apart from his development being stronger than that of his peers, Wayne Ford hadn't noticed any other distinguishing characteristics.
"I know what you're thinking."
The Night King turned his head and stared at him.
"Please, believe me, as long as we can help him to fully mature, he'll definitely make the difference in the upcoming battle. But he won't succeed if he chooses the wrong side."
Then he added very emphatically,
"Kevin is our future."
Wayne Ford didn't argue with him. He just stood there and contemplated the horizon and the future of the good forces in the world. At Lily's apartment in the Salix Leaf complex, Kevin handed his wife the documents that Tyler Dawn had sent over. "Take a good look. These are all the things your good grandma has done behind your back." Grandma Jones and Jason sat on the sofa looking very frightened and timid. Especially when they felt the anger coming from Kevin, they didn't dare to move a muscle. After spending a couple of minutes reading the documents, Lily threw them hard onto the table and her body trembled violently. When she converted her liquid assets into shares, the Jones family had actually bought all the shares she owned in the KWTD Corporation without notifying her. Then they used the profits they had obtained to fill the gaps in the Jones family's finances. In other words, Lily was completely out of money now.
How could you do this?"
Dorothy's face was full of anger.
"Mom, Lily and I are both members of the Jones family. How can you treat us like this? You've absolutely ruined us."
Feeling Kevin's pressure, Jason Jones didn't dare to speak. His legs began to shake.
"Lily, you have to understand. I didn't have any other options."
Grandma Jones sighed deeply. About a week before, she'd invested all the family's money into a project, but when it was halfway through, the sources of capital dried up. Helplessly, she could only listen to Jason's suggestion and buy Lily's shares to ensure that the project wouldn't fail. That was why they kept trying to snatch the Williams Company from Kevin. Otherwise, the Jones family would really be finished. "Well, Lily, do you still want me to give the Williams Company to the Jones family?" Kevin asked plainly. "Honey, I'm sorry." Tears fell from Lily's eyes as she replied. She just hugged Kevin and buried her head into his chest. All of her money was gone. She had once again been cheated by her family. Suddenly, Jason had no idea where he got his courage from. He pointed at Kevin and roared, You caused all these problems, you piece of trash. Williams Media is such a big company. You could easily have given us some projects if you'd wanted to. Then our family wouldn't have ended up like this.
That's right. Kevin, this is all your fault, you piece of trash. If it wasn't for you, how could Lily's money have been taken away from her? Get the hell out of here right now.
Dorothy was so excited that she couldn't think straight. She started pushing Kevin toward the door. I didn't give the Jones family a chance? You have the nerve to repeat Jason's nonsense? Kevin said with a cold smile. Yes, I concealed the truth from you. But in fact, I was the one who asked Tyler Dawn to invest in your family's business. I also asked Brittany Davis to give the contract to my wife. Then Kevin laid out the facts for them to consider. But what did you, Jason Jones, do in return? He tampered with Brittany Davis's equipment, conspired with Grandma Jones to steal Lily's shares, and then expelled her from the family. After that, he cheated her out of her money. I gave you more than one chance. If you blew it, you can only blame yourselves. And now you want to use my wife against me? Attempting to attack the Williams Company is just wishful thinking. Kevin continued to lay into them. There are some things that I didn't want to tell you. It's just that I didn't want to argue with you people. But it doesn't mean that I'm a fool who can easily be bullied. You all keep saying that you want me to return the favor to the Jones family. But during the few years that Lily and I have been married, how did you guys treat me? Don't you have any idea what jerks you've been? Kevin really let them have it. Compared to all the crap you've done, my greatest gift was to let the Jones family continue to exist in Chicago. Kevin still had a lot of things left to do, and he still had to save Phoebe. He didn't want to be delayed any longer by the Jones family's trivial problems. Instead of wasting time beating around the bush, he decided to tell them exactly what he thought. Tyler Dawn looked at Jason and Grandma Jones with contempt. If Kevin gave the word, he wouldn't mind letting the Jones family disappear immediately, and he could easily arrange for it. Honey, don't be angry. Take me away. I don't want to be involved with the Jones family anymore. Lily slowly raised her head and spoke to him quietly with tears welling up in her eyes. Okay, I'll get you out of here right away. Kevin tenderly wiped the tears from Lily's cheeks. He held her hand and quickly left the apartment along with Tyler Dawn. Dorothy was still in a daze. It turned out that her useless son-in-law that she had looked down on had actually done countless things for the family and she'd never known about any of it.
Kevin, do you need me?
Before Tyler Dawn could finish what he was saying, Kevin waved his hand to stop him. It's only the Jones family. There is no need for us to waste our time and effort. What you need to do now is to make a trip to Detroit. I'll give you the details later tonight.
Detroit?
Tyler Dawn was stunned for a moment. Then he quickly reacted. He excitedly asked,
Kevin, are you finally going to take the first step?
Yes, it's time. After Kevin finished explaining, he and Lily got into the Pagani Roadster and they drove away in a cloud of dust. In their apartment at the Salix Leaf Complex, Alan and Susan Williams were sitting on the sofa chatting with a middle-aged man. All three of them looked very happy to be together.
Alan, you've really raised a good son. Kevin is very young, but not only has he been enormously successful in his career, his personal development has reached an incredible level. I think it will only take him a few years and he will definitely become a force to be reckoned with. The man complimented them as he let out a sigh. The man's name was Richard Swinton. He'd been Alan Williams' closest friend for many years, and he was also the current head of the Swinton family. Richard, don't be too modest. Your daughter Brenda isn't bad either. Alan was very happy. It had been a long time since they'd had a chance to get together. Now, Alan, don't forget the arrangement we made. Our children are old enough now, it's time for them to meet.
Richard reminded him as he sipped his coffee. Alan's eyes grew wide and he almost choked on his croissant. He'd obviously forgotten about that. Alan Williams and his old friend Richard Swinton were sitting in the living room having a coffee when Richard reminded him that many years ago they'd agreed to arrange a marriage between their children.
The expression on Alan's face changed from happiness to deep concern. He and his wife Susan looked at each other, not knowing what to say.
"What's wrong? Did you forget that we promised that Kevin and Brenda would be married when they grew up?"
Richard could sense that something was wrong. After a few minutes of silence, Alan let out a long sigh. "Richard, I have to be honest with you. This is all my fault. Kevin has been married for almost 3 years now." To his and Susan's surprise, their friend didn't show any reaction after hearing this news.
"That's okay, buddy."
Richard smiled and waved his hand like it wasn't a problem at all.
"A man doesn't have to limit himself to just one woman. And Kevin is such an outstanding young man. I'm sure that any young woman would be happy to be with him."
Alan and Susan secretly sighed in relief. "That's very understanding of you, my friend. I'm not sure what to say now." Alan smiled with relief, not knowing how to express the complicated emotions he was feeling.
"There's nothing to worry about, Alan. Since Kevin is already married, well, I have 2 daughters who don't have any children. If it's okay with you, I'll consider Kevin to be my adopted son," Richard replied generously.
"It's your good fortune that Brad chose you," Alan said with a laugh.
The 2 older gentlemen spent a long time chatting and catching up with each other. Kevin parked the car right in front of the apartment building to let the valets take it to the garage. Seeing Lily sleeping so soundly in her seat, Kevin couldn't bear to wake her up. "Leave the Jones family and come with me. You made an enormous decision today, didn't you?" Kevin thought to himself. He reached out and touched Lily's hair. He got out of the car slowly and carried Lily to the elevator and up to the condo. He placed her gently on the bed and placed his hand on her to give her some spiritual energy so that she could have a better rest. After that, Kevin left a note for her, changed into a new set of clothes, and headed back out. On the way out the door, his phone vibrated.
"Hi, Mr. Williams. I'm calling to let you know that Mitchell Cook and the others are here with me at my place,"
Tyler Dawn said respectfully over the phone. "I'll be right there." Kevin slowly raised his head and looked up at the dim sky. His eyes were actually twinkling. After so many years, they were finally going to embark on their journey. Half an hour later, just as Kevin stepped into the meeting room, the few people who were chatting happily suddenly stood up to greet him.
"Mr. Williams,"
Mitchell Cook and the others called out respectfully. "We're friends here. No need to be so formal. Just sit down and talk." Kevin waved his hand and looked at Tyler Dawn. He continued, "Have you finished the things I asked you to prepare?"
"Everything is ready."
Tyler Dawn picked up the remote control and pressed a button. The room immediately turned dark and an enormous screen appeared on the wall. The image that was displayed was a detailed chart filled with names along with lines showing their relationships. The 2 main colors were red and blue.
"This is the current distribution of power in Chicago. I don't know what the reason is, but about a month ago, a lot of powerful people began gathering here, and the most outstanding ones belong to the 10 major schools," Tyler explained. "Their gathering has greatly affected Dominic, Archer, Drake, and even the Steele family." Tyler Dawn pressed the button again, and lots of blue areas appeared on the screen. "These are the methods I use to invest in Chicago. I began with the most powerful families in the region." Mitchell Cook and the others' eyes lit up when they saw what was happening. They were all outstanding business people, so they could naturally tell what was going on. What Tyler Dawn had stumbled upon was actually the backbone of the business forces in the whole Chicago area. Kevin nodded slightly and broke the silence in the room. "Here's the problem that we are facing. How do we control the main powers in Chicago? How should we implement the step that we are about to take?" Tyler Dawn and the others frowned and nodded their heads. Kevin's words hit the nail on the head. "The Butler family."
Mitchell Cook hesitated for a moment before he added,
"According to the information I received, the Butler family has been in close contact with the Hayes family in Detroit recently."
When they heard this, everyone subconsciously looked at Kevin. After all, the Butler family's heir apparent, Doug Butler, was still lying in the hospital. Using the Butler family to establish a foothold? Kevin fell into deep thought. That's a good idea, but how do we do it? Mr. Williams, you might not know this, but the Butler family is preparing to collaborate with the Hayes family to set up a new energy company in Chicago.
Mitchell Cook answered hesitantly as he tried to recall the details. All of them were good at business, but they didn't know much about the new energy industry, so they were a little out of their element. You've been putting pressure on the Butler's family's businesses for the past few days. Try your best to draw the Hayes family's attention to me. Kevin's intent showed in his eyes. It just so happened that he was going to Detroit to save Phoebe from a horrible marriage. Wasn't the Hayes family planning to celebrate the happy occasion? Then he could give her a really big gift. When Kevin left Tyler Dawn's mansion, it was already past 8 o'clock in the evening. Just as he was about to go back and see Lily, he received a call from his father. "What happened, Dad?" Kevin asked nervously. He knew that his parents would only call him if they had a serious problem.
"Do you have any free time now? Come over here right away."
Alan Williams sounded a little anxious. "Okay, I'll be right there." When it came to his parents, Kevin didn't waste time asking any questions. He quickly drove over to their condo at the Salix Leaf Complex. Half an hour later, Kevin parked his car in front of the building and looked up at his parents' window. He could see that there wasn't a single light switched on in their place. Could it be that something happened to Mom and Dad? Kevin was a little impatient to find out what was going on. When he got upstairs and opened the door, Kevin quickly retreated. He clearly felt a strong wind blowing toward him. After that, a dark shadow slowly walked out of the living room. "Who are you?" Kevin asked cautiously. "What happened to my parents?"
If you want to save your parents, you have to strike me first.
"You're asking for trouble." Kevin narrowed his eyes and the internal energy in his body burst out. He shot towards the man like a cannonball. His fists moved like lightning and Kevin didn't care what he did to this person. He just wanted to find out where his parents were. However, the man easily blocked his aggressive punch.
Too slow.
This man casually flicked his wrist and sent Kevin flying backwards. However, he didn't injure Kevin at all. After he stabilized himself, Kevin took a deep breath. It was obvious that the man hadn't used his full power, which was certainly immeasurable. "Who are you exactly? Have I offended you in some way? What have you done with my parents? They're just ordinary people and they're not involved in any of the power struggles going on in the city. I think you should understand that they're not a threat to anyone," Kevin explained very honestly.
Kid, you didn't offend me, but I just can't help it. I don't like the way you looked at me,
the man replied in a flat tone. The whole time this was going on, the man never left the shadows, which made it impossible for Kevin to see his face clearly. "What the hell? What kind of explanation is that? You attacked my parents for no reason at all?" Kevin thought to himself. This was very confusing. Kevin knew that he could be thick-skinned, but now he'd met someone who was even more cold-blooded than he was. Kevin reached into his jacket and pulled out the night dagger. In the next second, he moved so fast that he seemed to disappear from where he was standing and then reappeared right in front of the shadow man as he slashed down at him.
"Stop it, young man. If you continue fighting like this, you'll bring the destruction of this entire family."
The shadow man suddenly became nervous. He waved both of his hands and centered himself calmly in front of Kevin. "You don't want to fight? Then what do you want from me?" Kevin asked as he took a step back and lowered his weapon.
"I want you to be my son. As long as you're willing to agree, your parents won't,"
he started to explain hesitantly. "That's impossible. Are you threatening my family? Don't even think about it." Kevin forcefully interrupted the man before he could finish what he was saying. "Even if you beat me to death, I won't become your son."
"Is it really impossible?"
the shadow man replied jokingly. "Absolutely impossible. Not a chance." Kevin looked at him curiously. Deep down inside, he felt that this was a really strange person. And what a strange thing he was asking for. When Kevin went to his parents' home to try and find them, he was confronted by a strange, powerful man who was hiding in the shadows. The man said that he wanted to adopt Kevin as his own son. Of course, Kevin refused. As he was trying to figure out what was going on, he heard a familiar voice. And what if I agreed to you becoming his son? The lights in the condo all lit up, and Kevin saw his parents standing in the living room, but there was also a middle-aged man standing by the door. Mom, Dad, are you okay? Kevin asked anxiously. Don't be nervous, Kevin. Richard Swinton is the head of the Swinton family. He's been good friends with your father for many years. His mother quickly walked up to him and looked at her son lovingly as she explained what was going on. Kevin was stunned and couldn't decide how to react. He'd heard about the Swintons. There were many powerful families in the country, but only a few of them were able to earn a nationwide reputation like theirs. For example, the Williams family was only slightly famous in the Chicago area. Compared to the Sutherland family and the Thompson family, they were relatively insignificant. However, the Swinton family was different. It was a superior family with hundreds of years of history. In order to avoid attracting too much attention, they'd hidden themselves from public life long ago. However, whatever the family did always seemed to have far-reaching effects. After listening to his mother recount what had happened, Kevin came back to his senses and couldn't help but think, I never expected Dad to know someone like this. Kevin, your Uncle Richard came here to reminisce about old times with us. He also wants to take you as his foster son, Susan Williams said happily. What are you talking about? Kevin looked at his mother in shock. It turned out that what Richard said to him earlier wasn't some kind of a trick to take advantage of him. He actually meant it.
What the hell is this? Hurry up and give your foster father a hug.
Alan Williams took on a serious tone that he rarely ever used as he loudly chastised Kevin. How could he dare to disobey his foster father's orders? Kevin took a deep breath and walked over to give Richard a hug. Then he said, I agree to be your foster son. Kevin had already forgotten about what he'd said earlier. He wasn't a fool. From the beginning of the night, he knew that Richard Swinton was at least as powerful as Harley Shepard, and now he knew that the man was in charge of the entire Swinton family. If he had such a powerful backer, Kevin would have much stronger standing when he dealt with other families.
Not bad, Alan. This kid has the same vibe as you did when you were his age.
Swinton happily slapped Kevin on the back.
Come with me to my family's estate tomorrow and meet your foster mother.
Swinton couldn't stop smiling. Although he had a good relationship with Alan Williams, what satisfied him even more was seeing Kevin's potential. He was still young and had such strength. It was impossible to tell how high he could climb in the future. That night, Kevin fell into an unusually deep sleep, probably from a medicinal herb that Richard Swinton had given him. Richard lifted Kevin up off the couch like a father might pick up his sleeping child. He carried Kevin to his limousine, and the young man slept the whole way there. Of course, Kevin didn't even have a chance to let anyone in Chicago know that he would be out of town. Dorothy hadn't slept well the whole night. She stretched a little and then walked downstairs. When she got there, she almost fainted. The living room was packed with people. Everyone in the room was emitting a powerful aura. Paul Vaughn was sitting on the sofa with the other people she'd seen before.
What are you doing in my home? Do you know that you're trespassing on private property? Hurry up and get out of here, or I'll call the police.
Dorothy knew that they hadn't come with good intentions, and her heart was pounding rapidly.
Madam, how many days has it been? I want to ask you why the power pill still isn't in my hands.
As Paul Vaughn said this, he placed a large knife heavily on the table.
You don't need to panic. As long as we get the power pill today, we'll leave without making any trouble,
Jeffrey Bowie said with a nasty look on his face.
On the other hand, if we don't get what we want, we won't leave so easily.
If you want a power pill, you should be talking to Kevin. What does that have to do with me?
Dorothy was so scared that her legs began to feel rubbery.
That trash just came back yesterday, and then he took my daughter away. I have absolutely no idea where he lives.
Does that mean there aren't any power pills left?
Paul Vaughn's eyes were burning with anger, and a powerful energy was emanating from his body. Dorothy was so shocked that she took an awkward step backwards and fell to the floor.
Let me go! I only know how to deal with ordinary people. If Kevin has offended you in any way, you can kill him. Don't ever come to see me again.
Dorothy was petrified with fear. If she had any idea something like this would happen, she would have told Kevin not to leave yesterday.
You're Kevin's mother-in-law. If he isn't at home, then it only makes sense to come looking for you.
Paul Vaughn slowly stood up and gestured to the people who were standing next to him.
As long as you're in my hands, I'm sure that Kevin will be willing to exchange a power pill for your safe return.
When he finished speaking, a few Central Alternative Healing Academy members forcefully lifted Dorothy up from the floor.
No! Let me go! You're breaking the law! Don't you know that? I'm going to sue you!
Dorothy threatened them. Moments later, Dorothy changed from struggling and complaining to begging for mercy.
Please let me go! I really don't know where he is!
Tears kept pouring from her eyes. Now she hated Kevin even more passionately than before. If it wasn't for him, she wouldn't be in this terrifying situation.
Please let me go! If you do, I'll let you have Kevin and do anything you want to him.
Suddenly, Dorothy realized there may be another approach as she quickly said,
Don't you know that Kevin is the CEO of Williams Media? As long as you let me go, I'll make you give him all the money you want.
Unfortunately, Paul Vaughn and the others didn't care about her offer. Was money really that useful to people like them? They already knew that Kevin was the president of Williams Media, but no one dared to touch the company. Even the underground organizations had a code of ethics, and they avoided doing anything that would start a panic among ordinary people. No matter how powerful a group was, it had to make sure it followed certain rules in order to remain underground. On top of that, their reason for looking for Kevin wasn't very honorable in the first place. Perhaps because Dorothy's constant begging for mercy was getting too noisy, but Jeffrey Bowie decided to knock her out with the butt of his knife, and the group of people quickly left the apartment. An hour later, another group of people arrived at the apartment. However, when they saw that the place was empty, they quickly called a number.
All right, I got it. Get out of there immediately,
Thomas Williams ordered as he sat in his study with a solemn expression on his face. What's wrong? Didn't you catch him? Laura glanced at her husband and asked.
No. Kevin made arrangements in advance and moved his wife and mother-in-law out of the place.
The more Thomas thought about it, the angrier he became. He suddenly swept everything off the table and onto the floor. I didn't expect that piece of trash to be so smart, Laura sneered. Then she added, So what should we do now? Thomas tapped his temple in annoyance. He'd planned to get hold of a power pill, but never expected that Kevin would already be so well prepared. Now he couldn't even find Kevin. After thinking for a few minutes, Laura had an idea. She said excitedly, I think I have a way, but I don't know if you dare try it.
What do you have in mind?
Thomas closed his eyes tightly. He was so angry that his head was starting to hurt. Isn't that scumbag Kevin hiding right now? If you gather together a few of the most powerful families in the Chicago area and put some pressure on the Williams Company, I bet that he'll show himself. If he doesn't come out of hiding, then you can just finish off Williams Media anyway. After all, it was originally the property of the Williams family. It's time to take it back after handing it over to that scum Kevin for so long. When you're finished, the company will close its doors and Kevin won't have any financial resources. He won't be able to buy medicinal herbs and refine medicinal pills. Laura sneered viciously. Thomas seriously thought about following his wife's advice.
Now that things have come to this, perhaps it's our only option.
Thomas took a deep breath. For the sake of the entire Williams family, he really wanted to kill his nephew. At the Steele family's mansion, Dalton suddenly smashed his phone into pieces.
The top 10 schools have gone too far this time,
Dalton said angrily. What's wrong with you, Dalton? Miranda asked curiously.
Well, let me tell you what those bastards have done now. A few hours ago, some people from the top 10 schools kidnapped Kevin's mother-in-law. They announced that they were only giving Kevin 10 days to think about it. If he wants his mother-in-law to live, he must exchange the Power Pill's formula for her safe return.
Dalton clenched his fist tightly. How can this be? Aren't the 10 great schools supposed to be on the side of good? Their methods are too despicable, Miranda said in disbelief.
They're just trying to gain more power no matter who they hurt. No way I'll let that happen.
I have to tell Kevin and go with him to save her, Dalton said as he took Miranda's phone from her hand. Just then, their butler ran into the room in a panic. "You've got some terrible trouble. Old great-grandfather."
"What happened to my grandfather?" Dalton asked as he hurriedly ran upstairs. Kevin's father agreed to let his friend Richard Swinton be Kevin's foster father. That very night, Richard took Kevin with him to his family's mansion outside of St. Louis. Kevin slept the whole way there, and he was so exhausted that he didn't even wake up when they arrived. So he was carried up to one of the bedrooms of the guest house and left there until morning. When Kevin woke up from his deep sleep, it was already past 10 o'clock in the morning. Holy crap! Why did I sleep so long? Kevin jumped out of the bed like a shot. When he saw his surroundings, he was stunned. There were 19th century French paintings and beautiful decorations everywhere he looked. When he saw the bed he'd been sleeping in, his eyes grew wide. The bed frame was made of top-grade mahogany. Where am I? Was I kidnapped? Kevin scratched the back of his head and wondered what had happened. He clearly remembered falling asleep in his parents' living room the night before. Suddenly, a clear and pleasant voice came from outside the door. "Are you up yet, sleepyhead?" Richard opened the door and walked in. "Father, where are we?" Kevin asked with a dumbfounded expression. He was very sure that Richard must be a very eccentric person. Otherwise, who in his right mind would kidnap him and leave him in a room with so many valuable treasures? "This is the Swinton family mansion in St. Louis. Didn't I tell you that I'd bring you here last night?" Richard explained with a faint smile. Kevin's eyes grew wide when he heard this. St. Louis was the most prosperous city in the whole region, but it was several hours away from Chicago, and Richard actually brought him here fast asleep without anyone noticing? What kind of mysterious abilities did Richard have? "Don't just stand there staring at me. Your foster mother is waiting for you in the living room of the main house." After Richard finished speaking, he told Kevin to quickly pack up his things and leave the guest house, which was at the far end of the estate. After walking for about 15 minutes through the yard full of exotic flowers and plants, Kevin finally got to the main building and entered the living room. He really didn't understand why the houses built by these rich people were so big. They had more bathrooms than Midway Airport. As he entered, Kevin noticed that the Swinton family's courtyard was an imitation of an ancient Roman villa. All the flowers and plants made it a very beautiful and relaxing place to be. When he arrived in the main living room, Kevin looked up in amazement. The room was at least 2 stories high and spread out over at least 3,000 square feet. He was tempted to give Richard a thumbs up and say, "Awesome!" After entering the living room, Kevin saw an elegant-looking woman sitting on a chair, leisurely sipping her morning coffee. Beside her sat 2 beautiful women who looked a bit younger but had similar features. Richard led Kevin across the room and introduced them to each other. "This is your foster mother, and those are our 2 daughters. The eldest, Brenda, is about the same age as you. Our other daughter, Gail, is your younger sister now." "Mother," Kevin respectfully greeted the woman. "It's good that you're able to visit with us for a few days. Enjoy our peaceful home. Unfortunately, those poor people in Chicago don't have such a life." Catherine Swinton lightly put down her cup as she glanced at Kevin. Kevin wasn't too pleased to hear her say that, but he was a guest, so he bit his tongue. He could only nod his head to show that he understood. "Hubby, I want you to go with me to the mall. There are a few new styles that just arrived at the shoe store. Let's go and take a look at them together," Catherine said quietly. "But Kevin just got here, and he's not familiar with the place. Richard began to protest. "What is there to worry about? As long as he doesn't run around, he won't get lost on the property. Besides, don't we have any household staff here today?" Catherine directly interrupted him. "Are you going to go with me or not?" Okay, I'll go with you." Richard turned around and looked at Kevin apologetically. "Kevin, you can stay here and get to know your 2 younger sisters. If you need anything, just tell them. I'll be back as soon as I can." Catherine didn't give Kevin any time to answer. She told her 2 daughters she was leaving and then took Richard's hand as she quickly walked out of the living room. She didn't say anything at all to Kevin the whole time.
Kevin had grown used to this sort of contempt and disdain over the past few years. On top of that, he could tell that Richard and his wife had some challenges to deal with. Before Kevin could recover from his shock, Brenda suddenly said, "Do you still remember me?" When Kevin saw her face, he was stunned. Wasn't this the beautiful Brenda who hung around with Mackenzie and Penny? "You're actually my foster father's daughter?" Kevin wondered out loud. "Don't tell me you have a problem with that," Brenda said with a smile. At the same time, there was a slight blush on her face. It didn't quite match her demeanor when she saw Kevin. "Sis, how do you know someone like this?" Gail looked at Kevin with disdain as she sized him up. She walked over to him slowly and then she pinched her nose like he smelled bad and said, "I really don't know what my father likes about you. He actually took you in as his son. This is really a disgrace to our family's reputation." "Gail, don't talk nonsense." Brenda knew Kevin's true identity. The name of the deputy leader of the Myriads alone was enough to make someone want to get on Kevin's good side. "What do you mean, Brenda? I'm not talking nonsense. Look at what he's wearing. How can you even stand his smell?" Gail took a few steps back and deliberately put some distance between herself and Kevin. "Sure, he's kind of cute, but he's nothing like Mr. Huxley, is he?" Gail kept asking. "Sis, are you really going to marry a country bumpkin like him?" Kevin shook his head helplessly. How could she think that someone from Chicago was a country bumpkin? It didn't make much sense, no matter how nice St. Louis was. Then he suddenly realized what Gail had just said. Brenda wanted to marry him? Feeling Kevin's gaze on her, Brenda shyly looked down at the floor. Kevin had no idea what to think about this new development. "You're called Kevin, aren't you? Let me tell you, my sister deserves only the best. Look at yourself. Are you even a match for her?" Gail put her hands on her hips and sneered. "I advise you to give up this idea as soon as possible. She's definitely out of your league. Only a handsome man with a prominent family background like Mr. Huxley would be right for my big sister." Hang on a second. Kevin couldn't figure out what was going on. "When did I say I wanted to marry your sister?" "If you're poor, then forget about it. There's no need to put on an act," Gail said disdainfully. "Don't think that just because you look innocent, I'll see you differently. I know just what kind of game you're playing." "What are you talking about?" Kevin was completely confused by what Gail was saying. "Ha ha! I've exposed all your tricks. What else are you pretending about?" Gail practically spat on the floor. "Just because you're engaged to my sister doesn't mean you can treat me like some kind of fool." "What?" Kevin was so shocked that he couldn't even respond. And Brenda was so shy that she couldn't even look up at Kevin. She said quietly, "Kevin, don't be surprised. We can never go against our parents' wishes. I won't mind as long as you divorce your wife before you marry me." Just then, a cool breeze blew through the room, and it helped Kevin come back to his senses a little. What the hell was going on here? He'd only slept for a short while. When he woke up, he was at the Swinton family's estate, and now he was getting married. It was all too much. And why hadn't he gotten an offer this good 3 years ago? He had feelings for Lily, but the Jones family had just been terrible to deal with. "What are you talking about, Brenda?" Gail couldn't take it anymore. "Kevin, I don't want to see you in my house. Get out of here immediately, do you hear me?" "Why should I leave?" Kevin's face started to turn glum. He hated it when people told him to leave because he'd heard that way too many times in his life. "It was your father who brought me here. If he told me to leave, I'd do it immediately. But who do you think you are? What right do you have to make a demand like that?" Kevin replied coldly. Of course he was angry. Gail was getting more and more aggressive. If Kevin didn't give her a show of strength, she'd think he was a pushover. "I'll show you who I think I am," Gail berated him loudly. "Someone, kick this lowlife out right this instant." More than 10 men quickly rushed in at her command and stared at Kevin with a very unfriendly look in their eyes. When Kevin looked around, he was a little surprised to see how powerful and dangerous they were. Most people would have found them frightening, but Kevin wasn't scared at all.